art class. We've seen it before. School is school. Next door is English, and down the hall is math. Well, not quite. Something very different is going on here, and we're going to take a closer look at these kids, because this whole school has begun to think differently. In fact, we'll use this farmer to show you how. Many years ago, a farmer had an idea to build a mill to grind the grain he grew. There was a brook on his farm to power the mill, and he figured he would save a lot of time and make more money. With more money, he'd be able to buy his neighbor's farm, and he could grind the grain from that farm too, and even contract with other local farmers to grind their grain. As the farmer's wheels began to turn, he saw an ever-increasing farm and milling operation. So he built his mill. The profitable cycle he imagined, with the mill creating more profits and the profits cycling back into more crops and more grain for the mill, this is systems thinking. Because the farmer saw more than a single isolated cause creating a single isolated effect. He saw in his projected mill a cause which would be affecting itself, producing money and then more crops which would then feed back to the new mill, around and around and around. What's important about the farmer's great idea is that it was a system with feedback. The different parts of any system are changed as time passes, and they have a relationship to each other which is critical. They are interdependent. The process called feedback in a system is what creates cycles such as the farmer imagined, causal loops. And it's the feedback which is often overlooked in problem solving. As a matter of fact, if this farmer had really known where else to look for feedback, he might have avoided a serious problem which eventually showed up in later harvests. Of two main kinds of feedback, the kind the farmer intended to create was the kind of cycle which continually changes, like a snowball rolling down a hill. But the farmer had created more than one cycle in his system when he dammed the water for his mill pond. Mysteriously, his crops began to deteriorate. If the farmer had been aware of the second kind of feedback loop, which prevents change and growth, he might have realized something unintended had happened to an interdependent part of his system. To the farmer, his brook seemed to be purely a cause. It irrigated the crops, and now it turned the water wheel. But the new mill was feeding back on the brook, too. As the mill pond slowed the water down, many of the nutrient solids in the water were settling to the bottom of the pond, where they remained trapped. This second kind of feedback creates a self-regulating causal loop. This loop seeks equilibrium the same way a home heating system does when it includes a thermostat to turn the heat on or off, keeping the temperature in equilibrium. But equilibrium for the farmer meant a fixed limit on how much his farm could grow. Though the farmer approached his problem with systems thinking up to a point, he still failed to see how interdependent all the parts of his system were. Like most of us, he tended to see things in terms of isolated causes and effects. He couldn't buy another farm. He couldn't even pay off the loan he put into his new mill. In a way, the grain ended up grinding the farmer. The grain is unfortunately grinding the farmer in many common modern-day systems. The world is made of systems. We all know this fact, but it isn't the fact that's overlooked, it's the importance of the fact. Systems thinking is a matter of emphasis. And if the world is made of systems, if all things and the processes by which they breathe and grow and change and renew themselves are systems, then clearly how we learn is a systems problem.
You need to write a little note as to what you think is the problem.
History seems to show that people develop patterns of thought as they grow up. If they're not exposed to these broader pictures and their education is put out piecemeal, they don't get an opportunity to realize how things interconnect. It requires this shift of mind by our teachers to pass that kind of knowledge to students. so that they then get in, it comes naturally to them. It's part of their intuitive processes of reasoning that they will become systems thinkers and not linear thinkers.
It is Gordon Brown's conviction that a great many of our familiar world problems, trade imbalances, inflation, famine, toxic waste, have resulted from a fragmentation of knowledge and from linear thinking. Educators have begun to recognize and address problems in our education system. One of these awarenesses has to do with the way students learn. It is clear that the traditional approach, which divides knowledge into categories such as science and mathematics and history, creates a learning problem as it reduces the information to a codified set of facts. Students have no frame of reference for most of these disembodied bits of information, no place to put the facts to work. Traditionally, they have been required to merely record and store these facts for future use. We know that students absorb and retain knowledge much more efficiently if they can be involved in the information gathering process in some practical way that relates to their own lives. Learning, it seems, is a building process, a matter of constructing new facts from raw facts, instead of saving facts for later application. If knowledge is tools, after all, the tools must be used, not just saved. Another problem that arises from the traditional effort to compartmentalize knowledge is the unrealistic burden placed on teachers to act as the distributing sources from which knowledge must flow. The more realistic and efficient role for teachers, if learning is to be experiential and practical, is that of facilitator, coach, knowledge coaches. If this awareness that experiential learning works better than listening to a lecture or reading a book, trying to simply store information, if this awareness can be combined with a knowledge of systems, it brings us very near a revolutionary philosophy of education. So how do we combine these perceptions and make them practical? The answer is modeling, the development of simulations as standard classroom procedure.
Record your inventory. Step 2, record your inventory.
The creation of models is a fundamental tool of systems problem solving. Systems thinkers create simulations of real-life problems and experiences, and then proceed from the concrete reality toward the abstract, instead of moving, as traditional education often has, from disembodied data toward future applications.
All right. Step 3, receive shipment. Step 3, move those pennies into your inventory.
This means of problem solving, modeling, simulating, is a perfect fit with our objective of making learning something the learner can direct himself or herself. The new nonlinear way of thinking called systems thinking is itself a building block, a fundamental which can be put to work by students beginning at about the 4th grade level. And beyond its importance as part of the curriculum, a knowledge of systems also provides an ideal way of designing the curriculum itself and the structure of the school which teaches it.
Orange Grove Middle School, this is Lori.
Orange Grove Middle School in Tucson, Arizona owes much to systems thinking. There may be no better way to convey a knowledge of systems to students than with a working school itself as a model.
Ingenuity, since you did.
A system conscious of itself.
First of all, though, I need for you to give Miss Cosby your attention so she can read a couple of announcements.
I have a love note here from Ms. Kiefer in the library. She says, "Tisk, tisk, you're the advisor base with the most overdue books."
The day begins at Orange Grove with Advisor Base, a kind of homeroom, which includes students from all 3 middle school grades. These same students stay together in the same advisor base for their entire time at Orange Grove. And in keeping with the cross-connecting of both departments and people, everyone has an advisor base, including Principal Mary Sheets.
Okay, and I'll time you in just a second, and you have 1 minute to think of as many creative things as possible that she might be saying.
What's that?
It's a millipede. No, it's a
What's that?
It's a snake.
The group of people that are assigned to be advisors at Orange Grove comprise one of our subsystems, and just as with the students in advisor base, we're working on creating both a development of them as individuals as well as their sense of belonging to the whole system. We do the same with the adults here and assign each and every person to belong to a team. And teams are given team tasks to help them to build and refine their dialogue and collaboration skills. Grade level teams meet on a weekly basis and reinforce their interrelationships that they have among their members. They work on addressing problems, planning activities and curriculum, and maintaining the big picture of what's happening with their students. They're constantly working on developing an integrated curriculum which we believe should evolve through communication and sequencing and interdisciplinary planning.
Looking at this school as a system, determining its components and identifying the leverage points where a difference can really be brought about, has produced a different structure for the school, with a profound emphasis on communication between all the parts.
You know, I mean, they talked about like tuxes and gloves.
Orange Grove has created teams for everything. Teachers in each grade make up a team, and these same team members also belong to special task groups, so there are connections between teams.
And so what we need to talk about is ways that we can help the situation with Mark. He is Sharon's substitute for the
The 8th grade team meeting here is addressing the needs of a class whose teacher is away for a week.
I think the problem laid in that I just left it open to them is that you need to pick out a form of literature, either a novel, a short story, a play, a group of poems, and maybe it should have been structured more tightly for them.
Well, if she wouldn't be upset with us not doing what she has planned, you know, we can work out a dramatic presentation of some of those court cases that'll give them good practice for mock trial.
Yeah, I could do, yeah, there's all kinds of things, but that's really what I didn't know. She said improvise some if you run out of material. Well, improvising and totally changing.
How difficult do you think it would be to stop the kids what they're doing and have them start something else on?
Not at all. You would probably hear a joyous celebration throughout the entire
We can get together literature and writing and social studies and see what you actually want to do.
Okay.
But feel free to take it away.
Okay.
Now, the other thing that we need help on, and I don't know how much information that you have, because I have very limited information, is the field trip that's scheduled for Thursday.
I don't think she arranged for coverage. We need to get enough people,
Yes,
enough adults to go, because this is a wild group. This is a wild bunch, which is why they're the split one.
See, and I'm wondering if, especially given their behavior in the library and given the fact that we can't make the connections that she might have made, if it is a problem if we just don't go with this particular group, considering the situation.
Yeah, I think, Jane, what is your thought if the group doesn't go, if we don't do the field trip?
Well, I just don't want her to think that, you know, that I've let her down by not taking, you know, her half of the field trip, and I wouldn't want those kids to think that we were shortchanging that particular group of kids as punishment or something, because they are the group that's really concerned about things being fair. You know, but
in a normal school situation, that substitute would have been stuck with that class for a week and a half. Disaster area, and those kids would have been going nuts in there, and
He would have been frustrated.
we would have seen it in our classes, but we wouldn't have had any idea why
Where it was coming
why
from.
all of a sudden these kids are so weird.
Yeah.
But because they're having, you know, and it is that system thing. It's like it needs to go to the team because this is a team problem, and it's hard because, you know, I could have said, well, go talk to the principal, or, you know, that's not my problem.
Yeah.
But it's all my kids that I have all day, and it's my problem. And so, you know, it's always that you catch yourself and you think, God, it'd be much easier if we did it the other way. If I could just sometimes go in my room and close the door and not worry about how all these connections were made, it would be easy.
Except that it doesn't work.
Right.
And that's not easy.
And easy, yeah, easy is not what we're after.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all we have for today. Thanks,
This
guys.
critical time needed for collaboration comes from individual release time and from a staggered lunch schedule which accommodates team and task group meetings. Thus, teachers are able to visit other classrooms and to consult with the Systems Thinking project mentor, Frank Draper. A teacher at large, Mr. Draper not only assists and trains teachers, he's available to all students.
People are real good at figuring out the structures of systems. What things are related to what affects what. They're real poor at the dynamics, what those relationships mean. So this is related to this, big deal. What does that mean as far as how the system behaves? Computers, though, once you put those assumptions together, can tell you, here's what they mean, here's how this system behaves. What we're trying to do with computer models and simulations in our classrooms are having students not just learn a bunch of isolated facts, but to learn the world as a set of relationships and interdependencies and behaviors. So that instead of just learning what are the parts of the cell, what the kids learn instead is how do cells work, and as you're learning how they work, here are the pieces of that cell working together to do these things. What we're really trying to develop in the kids is a view of the world that is dynamic.
Goody.
Go to credit card.
Credit card?
And how much do we owe them?
You don't have to keep a required amount in savings, but remember when things come up like losing your job or something like that, if you don't have anything in savings, that you're stuck.
Frank and I designed the money management simulation so that my students would have a real life experience with managing a budget and all of the pieces that are involved with that. Their goal was to pay their bills for a set amount of time and furnish an apartment. So they had to manage their free money, as well as handling a checking account that accrued interest, making sure that it stayed balanced, keeping a charge card that charges interest against them whenever they made a purchase.
Wait, how much money do we have?
They had to make purchases, and so they had to consider sales tax.
No, let's see.
Waterbed?
We can get a recliner chair.
Let's get a waterbed.
Dealing with the fact that you don't see those statements until 30 days after you've made your charges.
Oh, no.
Adding and subtracting money, and in some cases, multiplying.
You just paid the minimum payment, so we paid them $10.
Multiplying with percentages.
Why were we fired?
Add and subtract decimals.
795 to pay the bill.
It gave them a concrete, real-world situation in order to demonstrate their knowledge of percents and a context to use that knowledge of percents.
Now,
How come your Visa credit line
I hate this because we have to return to school again. This has happened to me before.
Pay $300. Should I pay both?
Check our checking because we lost money that month, and we had like 315 stored up, and then we took it all in cash, and then we had to pay 328 plus our bills. Hurt us.
Oh, okay. But did you have enough to pay your bills, or did you have to go behind?
Yeah, we had like 152, but what we wanted is a stereo VCR and a CD player for home.
And you couldn't buy it?
It's a very materialistic game.
Fortune job
interview. All right.
And all we had was like a waterbed and table and chairs, and the next month we were going to start buying luxuries like TV and stuff, and then they fired us, and so we didn't get anything. We've been just like sitting on the waterbed looking at our table.
Oh, that is pretty boring.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, in this case under penalty of perjury, so help you God? I do. State your name.
As helpful as
occupation, and
computers are, there are many other effective ways of creating practical, real-life simulation.
Did you ever see Chris have possession of drugs or...
Social studies teacher Jane Chilcutt's primary objective in setting up mock trials for her classes was to get them to understand how our justice system works. But in fielding this idea to the 8th grade teachers team, she was able to also incorporate a writing component with students writing their own criminal and civil cases, and a drama component developing their performance and speaking skills.
When guilt is assumed and innocence must be proven, liberty will be safe for no one.
There was even a science and math component where expert and forensic testimony had to be prepared.
To be able to identify the chemically analyzed drugs as though she...
On the same day students visited the county courts building in preparation for their own trials, they also visited the local theater company.
You may be seated. Has the jury reached a verdict?
Yes, we have.
How do you find the defendant?
Not guilty.
Now, let's have a little feedback. I want to know how the lawyers felt about the trial. Any of the lawyers.
We didn't prepare well for that. We didn't prepare to...
We had more...
It was, if we would have worked on our the closing statement a little bit more, maybe.
Now, what you're going to do is, this is a soda pop system. You are all selling like Coke, Pepsi, that type of stuff, all right? These people here at the retail level, they own a store. They're going to get orders from customers.
Business and finance can be simulated without computers too. This production and distribution game, created at MIT, has been played by business executives and diplomats from several countries. The problems they encountered in sustaining an even flow of both goods and cash were no different than the problems on this day at Orange Grove.
Then you have a negative inventory. You owe 31, right? 31, and put it right here. Or put it 31 right here. You owe them 31. She's doing it. The way that this system is set up is that even though you can make choices, you end up with these huge swings. And it's easy to point to the people next to you saying it's their fault. They ordered 50 when they're just responding to stuff. Now, the people at the retail level, you would order, let's say, 20.
Yeah.
Then what would you get?
Like, well, depending on what they ordered, 20. Well, like...
Would they give you 20 right away?
No.
Why, David, how come you couldn't ship him 20?
Because we, ran out.
Because you ran out. So what did you have to do?
We shipped them 5, and then we ordered a bunch more so we could make up for the 5 and fill it.
Right. Now, when he only gave you 5, what was your response? You ordered 20, he only gave you 5.
Yeah, I thought I ordered, more.
So you ordered more because that dummy's not listening. So you ordered 20 more. David, what situation were you in?
I was ordering 20 every time.
No, wait a second.
So we could, because since they weren't listening, we were cooperating with each other, but those guys...
What if, in the real world, every company in the country had super high inventories? So that in their inventory boxes they had tons, all right? How much would they order new?
Not very much.
Not very much. Now, what do you know is happening to our economy right now, Tim? We have high inventories and very little orders. And we call that a recession.
The degree to which students at Orange Grove are acquiring knowledge is something that must be measured. Assessment is in fact perhaps more important here, since many of the teaching methods are new, and the assessment process is itself experimental. Here we see a problem-solving presentation done in writing class to satisfy a nonfiction assignment. It incorporates, besides writing, several media: audio interview, video dramatization, performance, and it will be evaluated by both teacher and classmates.
If wildlife rehabilitators train prison workers to care for injured and abandoned animals, we could greatly lower the amount of hurt animals.
The more prisoners helping animals, the more public awareness. The more public awareness, the fewer animals hurt.
Besides demonstrations of many kinds and traditional testing, teachers engage the students in a continual interview process to gauge their understanding.
As I said, they're like the Germans, and I said why they're like the Germans.
Whoever's checking your paper needs to have written that you didn't have a quote there.
This is admittedly a subjective means, but it is not unlike the real world, and it emphasizes the teacher's role as personal coach.
It may change slightly, but for now, mark that he has the explanation.
Okay. What's the transition right here? About this one?
I don't have any quotes at all.
Well, let me give you a little test. Okay, populations was the very first thing that you worked on this year.
Near the end of the school year, Frank Draper is reviewing some topics which haven't been discussed since September.
What else about populations?
Well, land is also cultivated to make more room for people farming to have food for these people, and that makes a lot of, ecological damage.
Like what the country status is. Like say in the third world, like they have like six kids per family average. So you can see right there that they're worse off economically as well.
Populations that overshoot.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
That's when they can't support themselves on the amount of food and land that they have.
Okay, so they're overshooting their capacity of resources. You realize you weren't ever given a test on this. I mean, how did you learn this stuff?
We talk about what we're doing before we do the computer simulation, and then you kind of understand it. And then when you do the simulation, it's like learning it thoroughly.
Can you remember what that simulation was where you learned that? Can you tell me what you were doing? Yeah.
Well, we combined ourselves in the class in I think it was 5 different teams or 6 different teams, and we had fishing boats. We owned a fishing company, and we had to we'd go out every year and we could buy new boats or fish a lot, and you could send your boats in different places to try to get the most fish, but not overfish them, so that then you wouldn't have any and you would go bankrupt.
We also did one on deer somehow, wasn't it?
So tell me about that.
We were trying we were giving out hunting licenses, and we didn't want to give too many because we wanted them to survive.
This is cool. You guys know a lot. I don't know if you realize this. We thought that you guys knew this stuff, you know, but we had never given you a test on it. And now I just did. And I think you guys passed. Now let me ask you.
There isn't a course taught at Orange Grove called systems thinking. Those words seldom come up in class, and probably wouldn't mean much if they did. However, these students are aware of a profound difference in their own attitudes towards school and learning. They're also now more inclined to see problems in terms of whole patterns, containing parts which all depend on each other and affect each other.
The real exciting thing for me that happens throughout this whole thing, school, systems thinking, is the fact that the kids like it. It's that the kids are excited about coming to class, that the kids create their own homework, that they're eager to learn this stuff, that they come and tell me spontaneously that this really has meaning, that they're in control of their learning, that they get to be creative about what they're doing in class. And when you can get people interested in learning, that doesn't just stop in June, and it doesn't just stop after 12th grade. And these people are going to be learners all their life, I hope.